Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We want to welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El Hajj Maurice Alakan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. Today, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we're going to have a challenging program that marks the year-long anniversary of a horrific tragedy. The genocide in Gaza has been going on now for a year. That today is it sparks the beginning of that unfortunate tragedy that is still before us and expanding into other areas of that region. To begin our conversation today, we have what I consider to be a dear friend of the Muslim community, someone who has been an outspoken peace and justice advocate from within the Judaic tradition for as long as I've known him. We have with us today as our first guest, Rabbi Yisrael Dovid Weiss. And without any further ado, I want to welcome him to the platform. Welcome, sir.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum or shalom.
Thank you. Alaikum salam. And yes.
Yes. It's really a pleasure for me to be in your company again, Rabbi Weiss, although it is heavy on the heart, the circumstance, the topic that brings us together once again.
Yeah.
It's been a year. What are your thoughts on what has transpired thus far this year?
Yeah. Well, first, with the help of the Almighty, I pray to the Almighty to bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message, and so, inshallah, sanctify His name and bring peace to the world. Amen. It's a really great honor. I'm humbled to be on your program, and especially that with God's help, it's going to be heard around the world. And that is what we're very acutely interested in. We find it's critical that the truth of what the conflict, this quagmire, and all the other, this Nakba, basically, the basics of it, and what is happening, that the world should become aware and understand what the issue, the truth is, the issue of this terrible, terrible Nakba. So it's critical that we be on the program, because as you and many other people, but not the whole world, unfortunately, know that this issue is being totally distorted. We have here a slaughter, a genocide, beyond words. We don't have the words to express the sorrow, the pain of what is transpiring both in Palestine and Lebanon, and, by the way, in occupied Palestine, both to the Palestinian, the Arabs, both to the other inhabitants, and to the Jews who are being occupied, who are being oppressed by this nationalism, by this Zionist state of Israel. This is ongoing for 76 years and more since the introduction of Zionism. And the world thinks that we are witnessing a war between religions, between Islam and Judaism, between practitioners of Islam, practitioners of Judaism. And therefore, it's an issue which many people would like to distance themselves. They don't want to get involved in a religious conflict. And also, they feel a lot of times they misjudge and they vilify one side or another, and because they feel that they're unjustly oppressing another religion. In this case, what we're meaning is that they are looking at the people of Palestine, of Lebanon, and Yemen, and so forth, and they're looking at them as people who do not accept, do not countenance another practitioners of another religion of Judaism, and they're trying to kill them. And that is what the narrative is of Israel, the state of Israel, and the Zionist movement. They're trying to portray this for many, many years, from the beginning of their existence, as simply a people, the Jewish people, wanting to return to the land that God promised them, and there are people who have stolen the land, and they're refusing to give up what they've stolen, and on top of that, they hate the Jews. And therefore, they're opposing, not only they don't want to give up the land, but they simply want to kill the Jews. This is all abhorrent. It's revolting to hear, and it's all patently, categorically false. We are dealing with here, there is a Judaism and Islam. Judaism is a religion of 3,000 years to serve God, to be subservient to God. In fact, Judaism dictates for the Jews not to steal and not to kill and to do kindness and to live with other people, to be to emulate God, to be an exemplary people. That is what we're taught, that we're to show kindness as God, just as God is compassionate, you should be compassionate, and so forth. We are forbidden since the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago as a Jewish people to create any type of Jewish sovereignty, regardless if the land is a desolate, empty, uninhabited land, or people living there. But even if it would not be any people living there, we would be forbidden, since the destruction of the temple, that God decreed that the Jewish people that it should be destroyed. Since then, we have never attempted as a Jewish people, even though we had the capability through 2,000 years to reestablish some type of a Jewish entity somewhere, we never did it because it's forbidden for us. We're in exile as a decree of God. What does God want of us? To be practicing the Jewish religion, doing good and kindness, and upholding the covenant that we made with God 3,000 years ago on Mount Sinai, because that's what Judaism is, a covenant that we made 3,000 years ago on Mount Sinai, to be subservient to God, uphold the words of the Torah. That's our covenant. This is basics of Judaism. On top of that, we are to be loyal citizens in every country we reside. That's also a commandment of God. And we should pray for the well-being of all the countries we're residing, and be grateful and thankful for the fact that we're embraced and given a home, which is in all the Muslim lands. We were given a home, and we were able to flourish in those lands. We went through many trials and tribulations throughout this 2,000 years of exile, and it was the Muslim lands that took us in, and we flourished amongst them, even though there were no human rights groups to protect us. It wasn't necessary. And that is including, besides all the Arab lands of Egypt and Tunisia and Yemen and on and on and on, in Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
But in Palestine itself, it was under the Ottoman Empire, and we were accepted amongst the people, the leaders of the Ottoman Empire, and we were flourished amongst them. We put out our greatest rabbis, and this is the history of Jews. I carry pictures, and it's anybody could go to our site, NKUSA. Jews lived in the streets of Jerusalem. They flourished amongst the Arab and Muslim people, as they did in all the Arab lands. Now, that is basic. There's Judaism, a 3,000-year-old religion, and then around 140, 50 years ago, a movement started called Zionism. Zionism is a nationalist movement. It is a transformation from subservience to God, from this covenant that we made to God, into a base material concept of a people making a national home for themselves. And that is what the Zionists did. Zion refers to Zion, that in the Hebrew pronunciation, meaning the city of David, meaning Jerusalem, basically. And there was a group of people who decided they wanted to make a national home. Most of them were from Jewish parents, and they decided they wanted a national home. And they had their reasons why they wanted it. There was different reasons. They wanted to be looked up upon by other people, and they decided they're going to make a national home. Now, that flies in the face of Judaism. We're not allowed to establish a home, and that's all the rabbis immediately around the world stood up and said, whoa, this is unacceptable. You cannot make a Jewish homeland, the Jewish sovereignty, even 1 inch, 1 centimeter is forbidden. So that on its face would be unacceptable. And the rabbis, as I say, from day one, at the beginning of Zionism, we put out a book called The Rabbis Speak Out. It is a compilation of 130 years, this was written years ago, of the rabbis around the world, in every country, whether it's Sephardic countries and the European countries, all around the world, they all said this is unacceptable. But to add to the rebellion of the desecration of Judaism by making a so-called Jewish sovereignty, because it's not Jewish sovereignty, but to do such a thing, that is an open rebellion of the declaration of exile, that God said that we're in exile, we're dispersed amongst nations. But being that they decided to make their homeland in Palestine, therefore, why did they pick Palestine? For a very practical reason. They decided that in order to be able to gain the massive support from the world, in order to create a new state, a new country, they need really so much massive amounts of money and backing. And they'll go to Palestine, then they can declare to the world, hey, this is the land that God gave us. Look in the Bible. God gave the Jews the Holy Land, so you should support us. And they knew the Christian, evangelistic Christians and Christians at large, they'll say, yes, children of Israel, to the land of Israel, and they will support them in this endeavor to take a control of this land. So that is why they went to Palestine. Not that it was a lush land. Many of the Zionists wanted to go to Uganda, Patagonia, because they were looking for a practical land that would produce fruits and everything. In those days, 76 years ago, it was less technology. It was more of land that should be rich in order to be able to develop a land. So they were going to go to other lands, but they sat in their meetings in Basel, Switzerland in the 1890s, and they decided we're going to go to Palestine, because there we'll be able to, if we'll announce a Jewish homeland there, we'll be able to get the world support for that. But the rabbis said, now, not only are you breaching the laws of exile, that every Jewish person who accepts the covenant of God knows that God sent us in exile, we're forbidden to have a Jewish homeland. But by going to the Holy Land, you're breaching 2 other oaths. There's an oath that God put us under in exile, that he said that you do not return en masse to the Holy Land. We're forbidden. God foresaw there will be people who will be impatient with God's rule and what God wants, when you're going to go and return to the Holy Land, you are breaching an oath of God. God said that you are under oath not to attempt to end exile, not to return en masse to the Holy Land. And thirdly, by going to the Holy Land, they decided that is the place for their land. They had a technical problem. What is the technical problem? It was inhabited by many Palestinian people. The majority of the communities living there were Muslim, and then the second largest community was Christian, and the third was Jewish, the smallest of these 3 communities. They were all living, by the way, beautifully together in harmonic coexistence. They were living in the same courtyards. They were living in peace, as I've showed you the picture. But the Zionists come along, and being that they want to take control of this beautiful tapestry, this beautiful coexistence, they're going to take control over the land and call it a Jewish state, which they wanted to. By doing that, they're going to have to oppress, they're going to have to occupy and take over the rulership, the leadership, the control over the whole land. By doing that, they're breaching the third oath of God that says, do not rebel against nations. We're forbidden to rebel against any nation. In fact, as we have to, as a Jew, pray for the well-being of every land we're residing in. So what they're coming along, the Zionists, with their entire concept of creating a so-called Jewish state, the state of Israel, they're breaching all the three oaths of God that God did give to us when he put us into exile. Do not return en masse, do not rebel against nations, do not make any attempt to end exile. And therefore, in every facet, every way you look at the Zionist state, it is totally contradictory to everything that is Judaism. Yet, they call themselves the state of Israel. They use the name of Jacob. They use the Star of David. And they put on this facade of holiness. It's like God's giving them the right. And if you dare speak up against them, you are therefore anti-Semitic. You're against Jews. Now, the ironic point is,
before you go to that point, Rabbi Weiss, given what you just shared with the viewing and listening audience, there's a little piece of video that I want you to see from November of last year. And the date, the time is very important. November of last year, roughly a month, after the what the Zionists say was the trigger for their retribution. I want you to see this video and then share your thoughts. What is the takeaway of this video for you as a Torah-believing, anti-Zionist Jewish rabbi? Let's see that video.
הארץ שלנו, כל הארץ, כולל עזה, כולל הלבנון, כל הארץ המובטחת. אנחנו נחזור, ונבוא בענק. גוש קטיף זה כזה קטן לעומת מה שאנחנו נגיע בעזרת השם.
What do you take from that, Rabbi Weiss?
We take exactly what I was starting to say. Let us look at a picture of the fathers of Zionism. There was Theodor Herzl, whose picture is on the wall here. This is in 1947. Remember, the State of Israel was ratified in 1948. Here you find David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, reading the Declaration of Independence in 1948 in Independence Hall. Now, you see the Stars of David on the wall. A picture of Theodor Herzl is not, his head is not covered. It looks like he has a beard, but it's like a beard of a goat. It's not a Jewish beard. He's not covering his head. He was totally non-religious, as everybody knows, Theodor Herzl. You're looking at the dais of a country that they're declaring a state, the most historic, momentous occasion, and they're calling it a Jewish state, symbolic of the Stars of David. And all of these people sitting here, of course, no beards. You don't see any of them. Maybe there's one or two of them covering the head, but you don't see it. We're talking, and obviously you don't see any rabbis, any people who are truly pious scholars, rabbis, the ones who would be, if you would be making a Muslim state, you would have imams, you would have sheikhs, you would have ayatollahs. If you're making a Christian state, you would have priests. This is a Jewish state, supposedly, right? They're calling it on the name of God, that it belongs to them, and they're spitting at what means Jewish. They have the hubris, the audacity, the vulgarity of not having like representatives, of course, of the Jewish people, the leaders of Judaism, the rabbis sitting there. The reason they don't have it is because it's not a Jewish state. It was simply a nationalist movement, and they're simply, for their convenience sake, they've co-opted and hijacked and took the name Judaism, the Star of David, the symbols and the word Israel from Judaism, and they're using it as a tool, a weapon, in order to intimidate and silence anybody who would dare speak up against what the master grand theft of the land. So they're using the religion, and therefore people are silent. They're afraid to mix into this issue, and they use the second nuclear weapon that they have by declaring anybody who does dare speak up as being anti-Semitic. So what they're doing is they have the tools, two nuclear weapons. One that they call themselves that it's God's promised land to them, and the second is that if you speak up against them, that you hate Jews. Now, if anybody hates Jews, you have to look how they treat for 76 years the Jews in the streets of Jerusalem. Because, as I said, Jews true to the Torah, we all oppose this because it's directly contradictory to Judaism. We're not allowed to have this land. As the chief rabbi of Palestine in 1947 said, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. This is a declaration in the files of the United Nations a year before they even ratified the state. In July 16, 1947, Rabbi Dushinsky, the head of the Jewish community in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, basically, and around the whole Palestine, he said, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. And since then, in the tens and hundreds of thousands, they're demonstrating in the streets of Jerusalem, in Washington, D.C., in front of the White House, which maybe you've seen some of our demonstrations, because invariably the very religious communities are anti-Zionist because it's contradictory to our religion. But when the Jews in Jerusalem stand up and they refuse to go to their Israeli army, which is mandatory military service, boys and girls, they get arrested. When they stand on the streets, they get brutally beaten. Children, old men get attacked and they get assassinated. Our rabbis get there assassinated. You see, it's the army, and none of us carry guns. Nobody can accuse us for 76 years of carrying a knife or a gun. Simply, we stand there and scream at the top of our voices. We plead with the people, with the world. Listen to us. We're being hijacked. The land is being stolen by a group of people, and they're simply doing this by abusing and falsely using the name of a religion, and they're beating mercilessly the Jews who are living there, who refuse to accept their control. And obviously, for 76 years, they're busy beating, killing, oppressing, arresting the people of Palestine. But the most phenomenal and unbelievable issue is that if one Jewish person would have been manhandled, beaten, arrested in any other country simply for standing on the streets, you would have Netanyahu and his whole gang of thieves coming out there and yelling anti-Semitism and demanding restitution from whatever country did something to a Jew in their land. When they went to France, when there was an attack there on the supermarket, and he came yelling out there, and he said, of course, his statement was that all the Jews should go up to live in Jerusalem, and the Jews of France said to him, you're persona non grata. But basically, that's what they would be doing. But they themselves, daily, for over 76 years, are brutally beating and oppressing the Jewish residents of the Holy Land of Palestine, because we refuse to accept or to give recognition to their occupation. And that is the story, the sad story of this Nakba, that they have oppressed the people of Palestine. Oppressed is not the word, obviously. They've destroyed their lives. They're busy killing them, and the Jewish people who are opposing them. As a child, we were standing on the streets here in New York and going in front of the United Nations and pleading with the world. Listen to us. Listen what's happening. And this has culminated into this last year. It is a full round year, we would call it, a complete year that we've now lived by the culmination of the satanic murder of the people of Palestine, of Gaza, and now they've broadened it into Lebanon. We are witnessing inhumanity to its thousandth degree. Now, I'm a person who my grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. For 5 years and more, the Jews were openly being murdered by the Nazis. But there was maybe, you could say the world didn't have the internet. They didn't have that much knowledge, although a lot of the leaders did know what happened, and it was really, they were guilty to a large degree of being silent. But one thing is certain, today everybody is witnessing daily every single murder individually of the people of Gaza, of people of Palestine, and now of Lebanon. So, and the world decided after World War II that it cannot happen again. And they said, therefore, they made a lot of remembrances of the Holocaust, because why? Not just for a story, but not for history, but because that history should teach us that it should not be repeated. And now we are witnessing that the world is silent. Now, a lot of the world is not silent because they want to. It's because they are under a control of superpowers, leaders of the world, a few countries that have the main control over what is happening in the world. And these world leaders are being silent, and it's simply because it is it is unforgivable, it is unacceptable, and it is the Satan taking control. I again say 5 years this happened then, but we cannot be silent and watch this happening again. We dare not be silent. Now, the United Nations was created because of the millions of people that were killed, and that they took a whole religious the Judaism, and they killed millions, 6 million and more in the Holocaust. They killed them, and I say more because I met people from Russia, professors, and they said there was so many more that were murdered that was not even accounted for. So the fact is, these people were murdered, and they made the United Nations that next time there is a world conflict, they should be able to come to a peaceful resolution, not through military means. When they did this, this was a little before the creation of the State of Israel. And one of the first things they did was ratify the creation of a state called Israel, which means that there will be a minority called Israel, right? They're going to call it a Jewish state, and they're going to, instead of bringing peace, if you take the Palestine, the Holy Land, which was consisted of the majority Muslims, the second majority Christians, and then you're going to declare that it should be called under the name of a minority, under a specific religion, the State of Israel, you're calling for strife, you're calling for unrest, for hate, and for a bloodshed, pure bloodshed. You're asking for it. How? These leaders of the world, intelligent people. And the answer is because it's the works of Satan. The same answer why today people who want to be full of humanity when it comes to so many other issues, they're watching and either on best they're silent, and on worst they're colluding and helping the destruction of the people of Palestine in front of our eyes, in front of everybody's eyes. So if you look at the United Nations, you realize that it's only the works of Satan that this could have happened, and now it's the culmination of that. And I'd like to just add one thing. You see that the apartheid in South Africa was something that is so beyond belief. If you ask any child, they will tell you, if you tell them that the United Nations gave respect to a land and approved of it, and their ambassadors was called His Excellency and so forth, and was part of that big body of United Nations, while their legal system was apartheid system, and the ones who opposed it and pleaded that it should stop were arrested and were called terrorists, right? Nelson Mandela sat 27 years in prison. You'll see that it's like the world could make a colossal mistake. The United Nations gave approval and supported this apartheid, and it went on for tens of years. So you see that it could be a thing that the United Nations, the nations of the world, could approve for something that's totally inhumane, that's totally against God, that's totally wrong. And today, nobody would go and try to create a state that should be built on the concept of apartheid. It will never be approved by the United Nations. The same thing is with the state of Israel. It was approved. And the United Nations must stand up today and immediately demand, must, in every way possible, has to insist right now. Every minute we're waiting is another bomb, is another tens and hundreds of deaths and lives destroyed, and the families remaining orphans and emotionally murdered. We cannot be silent. The world must speak up. And that's why me as a Jew, and representing, with God's help, the hundreds of thousands of Jews around the world, besides the others that are because of humanitarian reasons, but the ones because we are true to our Jewish religion. As I say, invariably, the very religious communities you will turn to, whether you go to Al-Quds in Jerusalem, you go to London, in Stamford Hills, you come to New York, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, the largest concentration of religious Jews, where they're very religious, they say that we are totally against the existence of the Zionist occupation, the Zionist state of Israel. It is not Jewish.
With that being said, Rabbi Weiss, we have seen a tremendous outpouring of concern, of outrage, of members of the Jewish community in huge numbers in the United States and other parts of the West, declaring openly in the court of public opinion, not in our name, not in our name. You have large numbers of Jews that have been arranging many of these protests that have taken place. A question that many have is why does it appear that in the apartheid state of Israel itself, it appears that the overwhelming majority of Jews are right in lockstep with what the government has been doing for the past 7+ decades? Why is that? And is that an accurate read? And if so, why is that?
With the help of the Almighty, there is some truth to it, but it's not, I would say, an accurate read. Then I'll explain to you why. The Zionists, they have, as we will all know, they have an endless well of money that they are able to infuse in miseducation, in diseducation, in propaganda, in inculcating in the minds, both in the schools and in the media, which they have a tremendous control over the media, as everybody well knows. I mean, unfortunately, as you know, in Gaza, they don't even allow in international reporters, and if anybody does go there, they cold-bloodedly murder them without even an excuse or a flimsy excuse that's ludicrous. But that's what they're doing. But in their practice is in the Holy Land amongst the Jewish people. They what they do is they use fear mongering. I have to preface this with say I'm not condoning, and it's not an answer, unfortunately. But this is what they do. They propagandize and they teach them. They use panic, fear mongering. They tell the Jews the whole time that they remind them, most of the people in our generation, many of them in Palestine, are Jews who are children and grandchildren of people who witnessed their parents murdered by the Nazis, because a lot of them are immigrants from from Europe, where they witnessed how the Nazis cold-bloodedly, and not only the Nazis, colluding with the people of, I'm sorry to say this, whether it was in Germany or was Ukraine or in Hungary or Poland, the majority, they instead of hiding Jews, they gave them to the Nazis. They pointed out where they're hiding, and there was many people who tried to save Jews, but the vast majority simply, they either turned a blind eye or they gave them over. Jews couldn't even find a hiding place. The Nazis, clearly their ambition was to murder every single Jew. They didn't let them escape. My father escaped when the Nazis came into Hungary. He turned around and tried to get his parents out. They couldn't. They couldn't get them out. The Nazis were out to murder every Jew, and they paid rewards for the ones who gave over the Jews who were hiding. And if they found any non-Jew hiding a Jew, they killed them also. So basically, the Jews are still smarting from that. They're still hurting, and they're still fearful. And the Zionists abuse this issue, and they turn and they tell the people living there constantly, they barrage them with the fact that the people of Palestine and the Muslims, that they all are hand in hand with the Nazis. They're simply a continuation of the Nazis. And if the Zionists are gonna leave, then all the Jews are going to be wiped out. This is their mantra. They're going to be thrown into the sea. That's what they tell them. That's the basic. A Jew hears from them day and night. They're going to be thrown into the sea. That's what they're busy using the Holocaust for. One, to have the Jews fear the Palestinians, and the second is the guilt ride, which is the second issue we have to get into, that the people should support their existence in the Holy Land because of a guilt ride that the world around that the people around the world was silent. Let me leave that for a second, that second part. But basically, the Jews living in the Holy Land are totally fearful that they're going to be murdered. So many of them, not that they don't want Zionism, and they simply just want to live as a human being, and they're fearful of giving up or standing and fighting against the Zionists because they're afraid then they'll be murdered. That's one of the issues they have. Secondly, there's many Jews who are totally in opposition. As you see, the Jews are brutally beaten when they stand up. They're arrested, they're harassed, they're beaten, they lose their jobs. I can't begin to tell you. And around the world, whenever we go demonstrating, the Zionists come and they stand in your face. They take pictures, as you've seen maybe, and they if every demonstration, tens of people, or maybe hundreds, but at least tens of people lose their jobs because the Zionists take pictures and then they go and they find where they're working, and they harass the business where they're working. They say, you have an anti-Semite amongst you, and they say, we'll close your business down if you don't throw them out, because we're going to advertise you're an anti-Semite. As you well know, the system of the Zionists. This is around the world, but in Palestine, they simply arrest them, beat them, and so forth. So people are fearful to stand up to Zionism. That said, there are people who are in support. There are people who are gullible for Zionism and fell into their trap. But in every shape and manner, it's mostly used by false education, by falsifying the truth. There is a group of people that are Zionists, like I say. There is the settlers also that you find, and that's why it looks like there's so much religious people supporting them, because the settlers are always in the picture. But the settlers are totally a minority of the religious community. If somebody looks at them, you can even see that as a whole, they don't dress like the regular, normal, very religious Jew. Why? Because mostly they come from non-religious families or marginally religious, what they call modern religious, which is a euphemism for meaning that they compromise. They don't dress modestly, the women, or they come from families that they're totally ignorant or mostly lacking in knowledge and religion, and therefore they bought into the Zionist propaganda that, we're doing God's will, we're coming back to the land that he gave us, totally either ignorant or refuting the fact that we're sent into exile, that all Jews for 2,000 years never did what they're doing, never tried to establish a so-called Jewish state. So the settlers are coming as from universities. They're mostly from non-religious homes. And like I said, therefore, but they become very religious because they're gullible and they're idealists. and they think they're doing God's dream, God's wish by going there. But you're always seeing them because they're in the front. They're fighting there. And they have their rabbis. The Zionists were able to take a few people, rotten apples, basically. They pay them a fortune. They give them all this respect. They put them in newspapers. They traipse them around the world. The chief rabbi of Israel. We have a rabbinate. As I pointed out to you, we have the rabbinate. This was the chief rabbi in the 1920s, Rabbi Sonnenfeld of blessed memory, who met with the king of Transjordan. He wrote in articles in Arabic, in the Arab newspaper, saying, we do not want anything with these Zionists. And he met with the king of the Amir of Transjordan, the father of the head of Iraq and then the Jordan. He was the father of all of them. And he said, this is not us. And when he passed on, it was Rabbi Sonnenfeld, again, declared in front of the United Nations. He pleaded with them. He said, we don't want the Jewish state. This is the facts. He said, we don't want the Jewish state. It's not a Jewish state. And so these were the voices of the true Jewish leadership, and they still exist. We have our rabbinate. Till today, we have our rabbinate in Jerusalem, and we have nothing with the rabbinate of Israel. Just like the Israel uses the Star of David, they use the name Israel. They made a rabbinate because they have to make it look halal, look kosher, So they make a rabbinate. They put on this facade that they're holy, and don't you dare speak against us, because if you do, you're speaking against God. You're anti-Semitic. You're speaking against Judaism, against godly religion. And they have the rabbis in the settlements, and that's who the ones Ben Gvir and Smutrich and all these other characters who are part of this gang of thieves, this mafia that are but they're not part of the core religion. You go to the very religious community, they'll tell you this is abhorrent. This is haram. It's unacceptable. It's a blasphemy. It's against God. But
I feel you, Rabbi Weiss. There's another, and we're going to have to unfortunately draw this to a close. We've already gone longer than I had originally planned, and but it's always very difficult to shorten the conversation with you. You are a rabbi who feels very passionate about this this driving force that you have of wanting to make very clear to the world the distinction between Judaism and Zionism, which is very, very important. And I respect the passion that you come with. If you, given the fact that this is the anniversary, the very dark and torturous for those of us who are inclined toward justice and who are peace oriented, it's a very torturous anniversary that we are faced with today. What would you like to say to anyone and everyone out there who hears your voice in this particular broadcast? What would you like to say to them concerning this anniversary that we're in, and
right.
What, from your perspective, lays ahead?
Well,
what would you like to say?
Well, with the help of the Almighty, first to the people of Gaza, the people in the West Bank, the people in Lebanon, I would like to say, Kalbi ma Palestine, Kalbi ma Gaza, Kalbi Lebanon. Our hearts are with you. I was in Lebanon. We were in Sabra Shatila. We were in Baja Barajna. In Baja Barajna, they gave me a key to symbolize that they all are looking out to return to their homes in Jerusalem. We as Jews, I carry this around with me in my pocket all the time. We as Jews, we are constantly praying to God, and we urge the whole world that they should ultimately, it's in God's hand what will happen. There's tsunamis happen, hurricanes happen.
Right.
We don't understand the hands of God when destruction happens. We don't understand his ways. At the same time, all the babies are born comes from God. We don't know his ways. But God is compassionate, totally compassionate.
Right.
We don't understand, but we do know that we should pray to him. He's all compassionate, and that we should pray that everything is in his hand, that he should bring immediately the end of this occupation in its totality, totally remove this haram, this unacceptable, blasphemic Zionist state of Israel, totally remove it. Should be a free Palestine. God should help, and we at the same time we must remember, and we urge everybody: do not be intimidated. It is not anti-Semitic to stand up against Zionism, their occupation, and what they're doing, every action that's emanating from this state of Israel. In fact, the state of Israel is the personification of anti-Semitism. They are anti-Semitism. They are murdering people. They are oppressing Semites, of course, the Palestinian people and the Jewish people. As I've showed you, they're constantly killing, murdering, maiming, and people even on their, who are supporters of them, are dying for their cause, which is a empty cause, a terrible cause. So there's so many people died for a simple, selfish, flawed nationalist movement that started 140 years ago around. That's what people are dying for, that has absolutely no future, because in the Torah it says, why are you rebelling against me? It will not be successful. The state will end. But again, we pray to God he should bring it about speedily and peacefully. We tell there's so much, the anti-Semitic state of Israel that's caused so much bloodshed. We are urging everybody, stand up, don't be intimidated, point to the Jewish communities, the very religious, and say, you see that the very religious give their lives for their religions, who are seriously practicing their religions. They dress modestly, they eat kosher food, they send the kids at the astronomical costs into private education. They give their lives for their religion. And if it would be important for the religion to have a state, they would be the first to be on the bandwagon for the state. On the contrary, they're the ones who are opposing it. There's not one Israeli flag flying in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, or in Stamford Hills in London, or in Montreal, or in Al-Quds in Mea Shearim. They're the ones who are opposing the state. So what logically you have to understand, anybody who's looking with a logic, with common sense that God gave to every human being, they will see that it's something wrong, that they have been being sold something that is false, and they should not, therefore the people should not be intimidated. They should stand up and oppose the state, and they should look at the people that are dying every minute by the bombs that are falling on Lebanon and on Palestine. They must stand up. We have to figure out some way, do something, stand up, plead with your political leaders, and for the political leaders. So, again, the people of Gaza and the people of Lebanon and Palestine, we are crying with you. We are hurting with you. We are praying to God, and we haven't been silent. As Maurice, you've said so beautifully, we've been on the forefront in all the universities, in the encampments. There's tens and tens of thousands of Jews all over the world that are standing up and demonstrating. They're not being shown by the mainstream media, by the way, or only in a vilified and ridiculed and so forth. But this is the view. This is shared around the world by Jews. So know we are with you. And to the politicians, we are pleading with you. It may be convenient to support the state of Israel in the countries that you're living, because it may further your political goal, you think. But remember, God is the one who ultimately gives you life. God's the one who gifted you with the gift to be a leader of people, put you in your political position, and do not abuse that. You will have to answer to God. Did you carry out your duties? Did you do what was right, what was just, and use that gift that God gave you? Or did you misuse it? You will have to eventually answer to God in the long run. Somebody who supported apartheid, I'm sure today he's embarrassed of it. But so I'm saying, and wait, and doesn't even have to answer for the grandchildren who will grow up And they're going to use their common sense and the logic to say, how is it that you supported the murder? You were the one in control at that time. Did you, Grandpa, did you speak up? Were you the ones, is there something in Congress or in the Senate? Is there somewhere that I can hear and look at the record that you stood up and said, I can't stand this anymore? Were you there? What about our president? We have to plead with him that remember, open your eyes. Don't be led by the Satan. Do what God wants of you. And inshallah, we will see. God will help. This new year, yes. We'll see a free Palestine. Sooner nowadays, we can live together in harmony.
Yes, indeed. I want to thank you, Rabbi Weiss. That is a good note to end on, my friend. Again, I really value your passion. I value the friendship that you and I have had and the friendship that you and your community has had with Muslims and other right-minded people who want justice, who want peace through justice in the Middle East and all other parts of the world. So on that note, I want to thank you for joining us today and wish you a blessed remainder of your day. And please give my regard to those members of your community that I'm familiar with, who are familiar with your brother Salah Khan. So thank you very much for joining us today. Okay, we are going to take a quick break. And I know we don't have a lot of time left, but there is another little bit of very important information we want to bring to your attention on the occasion of this first ominous anniversary of a genocide before the eyes of the world.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media, your humanitarian broadcaster.
Searching for elite local and international investment and advisory services from an award-winning firm? Look no further than the Belmont Mayer Group, your gateway to unparalleled investment and wealth management. At Belmont Mayer, we believe in the art of wealth creation, a meticulous process fueled by our unwavering commitment to excellence. With a focus on providing elite alternative investments and quality advice, we also pride ourselves on maximizing value for our esteemed investors, as seen through our consistent outperformance. Your financial success is our top priority. Join us at Belmont Mayer and experience the difference firsthand. Ready to embark on a journey of greatness? Contact us today. Reach out to the Belmont Mayer Group on 078-786-1698. Call or WhatsApp or email us at info@belmontmayer.com. Elevate your financial future with Belmont Mayer, where every detail matters.
Send food and send kindness to those who have lost their homes and have been plunged into poverty. For those who are a meal away from starvation, a food parcel means an entire family can eat this Ramadan. That's the power of food. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities, conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Valley's Motor Spares. We supply motor spares and accessories for all makes and models of motor cars, LDVs, buckies, trucks, and earth-moving equipment. We deliver on time, every time. Please contact us via WhatsApp on 014-592-0925 or call 014-592-0925 or visit 28 Zenderling Street, Rustenburg. Remember the name, Valley's Motor Spares.
Help us build Masjid Hamza in Port Elizabeth. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever builds a mosque for Allah, Allah will build for him a house like it in paradise. Join us in creating a lasting legacy with Masjid Hamza, our current venue where Salah, Hifz, Maktab and vibrant youth programs take place has outgrown its space and is a rental venue. Alhamdulillah, we've secured a new property right behind us. The plans are drawn and the municipality has approved them. Now we need your help to build. Be part of the Siddiqah Ajariya, continuous charity that brings blessings in this life and the year after. Every donation brings us closer to our goal and earns you immense rewards from Allah. Donate generously today. Account name Al-Fida Foundation, Standard Bank, account number 036893382, branch code 051001, reference Masjid Hamza. For more information, contact us at alfida@telcomsa.net.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Okay, welcome back to today's broadcast. It's been a little rough. That interview that I had with Rabbi Weiss went on longer. In fact, 20 minutes longer than it was supposed to. But Rabbi Weiss, as are the other religious leaders of Neturei Karta International, they are very compelling figures. They are very passionate about the work they do. I have enormous respect for them. As he pointed out, they themselves are also subject to vicious attacks by the Zionists in occupied Palestine. And it takes a tremendous amount of courage and commitment to do what they do. So again, I salute him, and even though we went way over, he was well worth the time. In our remaining minutes, I just want to say something about what has me in Florida right now. I was here about a week ago, and on that visit, I was asked if it was possible for me to return because they were planning to have some activists here were planning to have a public action for Palestine to mark this year anniversary of this 21st century Nakba. And so I just felt that that it was my duty, if possible, to be able to get back here and to show my support for these dedicated souls here in this part of Florida. I want you to hear a message from one of the young organizers of the effort that took place here on Saturday. One of the young organizers that's responsible for raising consciousness around this genocide that's been ongoing for far too long here in this neck of the woods. Let's hear that message from our young sister, my brother.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
The reflection for today is what has the past year taught me about Israel, Palestine, the US, and myself. For the longest time, from a young age, I've known that Israel is a terror state, that it occupies the Palestinian lands, but this past year it has taught me that they do not care for any soul, whether it be a child, woman, man, cat, or dog. They will continue to kill no matter what. On the other hand, we have the Palestinian people. They are resilient and will continue to fight until their last breath. They have endured so much from the killings of their families, murdering, bombing hospitals, bombing schools, bombing shelters, and losing family members. They have had to evacuate time and time again, and each night they don't know if this will be their last night. For the US, I'm very disappointed in the government on how they keep on sending our tax monies for aid for genocide. I'm also disappointed in the people that are still ignorant about what is happening and that they just realized what is happening after the natural disasters and realizing that they will not receive aid because the government is sending money for genocide. People are just now waking up after a whole year of devastation. And it hasn't only been a year, it's been 75 years. This past year, I've become more aware of the situation, and I am not turning a blind eye for what is happening. Like many people, I was feeling helpless. But with the support of the community, we were able to pull off 10 actions throughout the year in our area. We have created the group Southwest Florida for Palestine, which is a community organized group. I have met many like-minded people throughout having these actions throughout the year. Separate from having actions locally, I felt the need to do more. So the only way that I felt that I could do more is by selling my baked goods and using the proceeds for donations. And I also was looking for local Palestinian businesses by resharing on social media or supporting locally. I just try to help my local community as much as I can, and I make dua that Allah protects them and gives them ease and have an end for this war, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. The voice of my young, committed, beautiful sister, Hana El-Gendi. She is one of the committed souls that is keeping the fire of awareness alive here in this part of Florida, part of this growing group. I mean, it was a mobilization that was held during a rainstorm under a bridge on the riverfront. I mean, when we first assembled, we could see that there was the threat of rain, but by the time we got set up, the rain started coming down. But alhamdulillah, people were still coming. We had a nice crowd of Muslims and non-Muslims, and I think the non-Muslims may have outnumbered the Muslims, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I think it was probably around a 50-50 split, but it was a beautiful assembly of concern, and so I'm glad I was able to make it back to give my support to the effort and to make new friends in this part of Florida. And with that said, the struggle continues. It's been a year. This maniacal state is expanding its agenda. That little piece of video that we showed that I asked the rabbi to comment on, I mean, this was a rabbi, not the type of rabbi that Rabbi Weiss is. This was a Zionist, quote unquote, rabbi who was in November of last year speaking with glee and exciting glee among the soldiers who were listening about the expansionist plans of apartheid Israel. Take all of Gaza, we're going to go into Lebanon and take that. We're just going to, we're going to expand the territory of our domain. I mean, this is what they were basically boasting about in November of last year. And so just a month after, the October 7th act of resistance on the part of the resistance Palestinian groups, within Gaza. With that being said, the struggle continues. The struggle continues on all fronts. It continues on the propaganda front. It continues on the organizing front. It continues in the halls of in these political halls. We have what may be a precedent-setting vote taking place next month here in the United States. The struggle is ongoing on all fronts, and it's important for people of sincerity, people who are truly committed to the principle of peace through justice, to do what they're capable of doing. Rabbi Weiss spoke about the obligation that is upon those who know, those who are aware. And this spirit of obligation, this teaching of obligation is something that is also intrinsic within Islam. We have an obligation to push back on injustice. We have an obligation to stand firmly for justice. We have an obligation to defend those who cannot defend themselves, those who are being oppressed. We have an obligation, first and foremost, to the one that created us, to Almighty Allah, because this is from the one from whom this command comes. And then it is an obligation to ourselves. It is an obligation to the society that we are a part of. Because at the end of the day, as Allah has said in the Quran, corruption has appeared on the land and on the sea on account of what men's hands have wrought. Allah will make them taste a part of what they have done so that they might return. On that note, we close as we normally do. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi kusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati. Wa tawasaw bil haqq. Wa tawasaw bis sabr. Which means, in the translation of the meaning, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.